Let's get that. Now let's share screen again. Okay, there, now we're in business. Yeah, we are recording this primarily for the emeriti who aren't able to attend in person. We started doing that last year with our webinars, and I think it was helpful. And we're very thankful and grateful to ITS. They sent one of their reps, Joe Bent, here this morning, about 11:30, and he spent about an hour helping us get all this set up. So fingers crossed, we'll see if it works or not. But in any case, yes, so as president of the Emeritus Center, I want to welcome all of you here. We've got Professor Randy Craig, who was also one of our Emeritus Center fellows this year, to honor him for the outstanding work he's done post-retirement. And he'll be talking to us a little bit about that today. And I also want to introduce Dean Napkin. Dean, come on up. Dean's a board member, but also chair of our program committee. He's the one who, with the help of the other board members, put all of this together. So I'll turn it over to Dean now to formally introduce Randy, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks, Ed. I have to say I'm blown away by the number of people here. Even back in March 2020 and even 2019, we didn't have such a crowd. So I'm thrilled, and I hope you're all comfortable. I noticed as we all entered, the room starts to heat up, and that's what I remember from 2019. The room always just get pretty warm.
Maybe we should keep the door open.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah,
It's not very noisy. So
right. Sounds good. So again, my welcome with Ed's, and I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today. Randy Craig taught at the University of Albany English Department from 1981 until 2017. He is the author of the trigocomic novel Studies in a Fictional Mode from Meredith to Joyce, Promising Language, Betrothal and Victorian Law and Fiction, and the Narratives of Carolyn Norton. That's a mouthful. Since 2015, he has taught at the Green Correctional Facility in Coxsackie, New York. He was one of our 2022 Fellows awardees for his work at Green, and he's widely recognized as an outstanding example of service post-retirement. So it's all yours.
thank you.
Is it necessary to hold this? I hope try without if you can project. Recording maybe? No, there's a recording on the computer. We'll take it. Let's hope it works that way. Let me turn it off. And then if you need it, just turn the switch on.
Great. First, I want to thank all of you for coming. I greatly appreciate it. I also want to thank the Emeritus Center for inviting me to speak today, and for the very great honor of being named a Reese Fellow. The work that the center does is really important in making the community, and not just the university community, but the community at large, aware that UAlbany faculty continue to make a number of contributions to the community after their retirement. I also want to thank my colleague Lana Cable, who was kind enough to nominate me for the Reese Fellowship. Thank you, Lana. My remarks should take about 35 to 40 minutes or so, and I hope that we'll have enough time for you to share your thoughts on what I've said, what I might not have said, or what I might have implied. And I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say about that. I'm going to begin by telling you about an incident that occurred in English 102, Literature and Composition, in the fall term of 2019. After 4 years of teaching at a New York State medium security prison, I had pretty much acclimated to anything that could interrupt or disrupt my classes, virtually all of which had nothing to do with anything I could do anything about. This event, however, placed the responsibility for acting, for doing, accepting what was said to me at the time, that's the way it is in jail, as squarely upon my shoulders. So I had to do something or not. This episode could, I suppose, have happened in any college classroom, but it had never done so in my, up to that point, 43 years of teaching. The class was a writing workshop and required students to work in groups of various sizes on different academic projects having to do with any phase of academic writing. About midway through the semester and midway through a 3-hour class, several students refused without explanation to join their classmates in the workshop groups. I was, of course, surprised, but also nonplussed. What should I do? How can I prevent this situation from escalating? Another student volunteered to join the spurned group, and I sensed that he knew a great deal more about the situation than I did. No surprise there. This is a hermetic environment. It's hostile. It precludes privacy, and it also enforces a homogeneous code of behavior. I thanked him and said that he should return to the group to which he had been assigned. As most began collaborating on the text, I called the students out into the hallway, hoping to understand what had prompted their refusal and to reach some conclusion about what I should do now. They were adamant about not joining the group, saying only that they did not like the other students. They returned to the classroom, sitting silently and sullenly by themselves. The other students, their curiosity gradually gave way to discomfort, and very little was accomplished for the rest of that class. At the end of the day, I drove home, preoccupied with what had happened. Gang hostility, rampant in the facility, but not common in the college program, seemed an unlikely explanation. More probably, the students' crimes accounted for why they would not work with one another. There is a hierarchy of felonies among the prison population, at the bottom of which is any sex offense. Rapos, which is the term commonly used for sex offenders, are liable to abuse from fellow prisoners, which ranges from bullying to exploitation to physical violence to, as I suspected in this case, shunning. While some students may feel impotent to stop such mistreatment, many share the bias. I felt that I could not let the situation go unaddressed, both for academic and ethical reasons. But I feared that any action I might take would place the ostracized students in even greater danger. I informed the academic coordinator for Hudson Link. Hudson Link is the nonprofit agency that oversees college and prison programs in 6 facilities in upstate New York. I informed the coordinator what I intended to do. He supported the decision, but could not alleviate my fears. At the beginning of the next class, after distributing a fairly lengthy written statement in response to the incident, I left the classroom instructing the students to take as much time as they wanted to discuss the situation without my presence in the room. After something like about an hour, they called me back into the room, and for the next hour and a half, we talked about what had happened. It was undoubtedly a little more than uncomfortable for the students. I hope that confronting the issue, however, would be better than simply ignoring it. Much of the discussion centered around what the students felt were the realities of their situation, which I could not possibly understand. This being an irrefutable, but also I felt something of a tangential argument. There were no explicit references to rapos or to the prison value system, but everybody knew what we were talking about. I don't think that any minds were changed, but I would like to believe that the discussion and handling of subsequent classes provided a lesson about what college was like and why it might be an uncomfortable, but also might be a good place to spend some time. I will note in passing that one of the shunned students, quite a young man, has since died in the facility. The circumstances of his death, I'm quite sure, will never be known. The following 5 excerpts from my statement will give you an idea of the basis of our conversation. So this is number 1. If you revisit the syllabus, you will see that 2 pages are dedicated to the concept of a writing workshop. One thing I didn't anticipate when I drafted that document was students refusing to participate in the workshop. Actually, it's never happened to me before. When you enter a college classroom, you become part of an academic community with both privileges and responsibilities. 2, not everything that college imparts to students is knowledge of a particular discipline. They teach life skills, collaborative learning, public speaking, working under pressure and to a deadline, and so on. These skills, which include working with others, whether you happen to like them or not, whether or not you approve of their character, or whether they might have done something in the past that offends you, these are an invaluable part of getting an education and getting along in the world. In addition, directly or indirectly, they teach values, what counts in life and why. 3, I did not explicitly ask the students who refused to participate why they did so, nor did they volunteer an explanation. I will say only this in response to their action. Any prejudice against a group or an individual has no place. Certainly no place in society, but I can't do much about that, but definitely no place in a classroom. One of the things that was said to me in the hallway outside of class was, "You don't understand, this is prison." My response now to you is, no, you don't understand, this is college. I cannot affect, at least directly, your actions outside of the classroom, but this space has conventions and values as any other community, workplace, or society has. While in it, you are expected to honor them, and you will be held to that standard. 4, students in this class should be treated equally by one another and by me. Also said to me in the hallway was, everyone here is wearing green. Drab green is the color of state-issued prison uniforms, and I am prohibited from wearing green clothing of any kind whenever I go into the jail. My response to all of you is exactly. Each of you wears the same uniform, and each of you should be treated in the same way, with tolerance, consideration, and respect. As a matter of personal policy, I neither ask nor make judgments about how you got here. What I care about is how you leave. You have an opportunity to experience college, perhaps to get a degree, hopefully to continue your studies. There's plenty of bigotry in the world, but education should be free space for academic inquiry and pursuit, and a space free from the biases that demonize and oppress others. To refuse for whatever reason to participate in that goal is contrary to the meaning of education and simply unacceptable. 5, it is incomprehensible to me that individuals who have likely experienced prejudice in the past and who, as formerly incarcerated individuals, will certainly experience it in the future, can perpetuate oppression in the present. Were I not to address this issue, I would be tacitly accepting something that I find abhorrent: bigotry and a failure to recognize our common humanity and our aspirations for better lives. I won't say more about what played out in the following weeks of class, but I often return to this incident as I think about prison education. I try in the wake of this experience to hear what was said to me: this is prison. It is difficult to know what my statement, "this is college," could possibly have meant to incarcerated students, especially those who may have spent very little time even in secondary school classrooms, who have never considered that they might one day enroll in college, and who perhaps most importantly are spending their time, are doing time in an environment whose challenges, and the students were completely right about this, few of us can imagine. I may tell such students that once they enter the classroom, they are on a college campus, but that claim may have more motivational than truth value. Can I, in fact, should I attempt simply to import college from the building surrounded by perimeter road and drop it into a space enclosed by high fences topped with razor wire? What follows doesn't exactly answer that question, and it certainly doesn't do so directly. But I offer some general observations about what that strange and contradictory space is like, both and neither prison and college. I have grouped these comments into those categories and subcategories, and I will close with a brief appeal to my fellow faculty and emeriti to become involved in prison teaching, although you may well wonder why you would want to do so as my remarks near their conclusion. So let me start with college vis-a-vis prison, and this deals with the elements of the prison life that will challenge faculty as you enter. And the first is status. As emeriti, we have long experience of life in academia. It is a privileged world, as for better and worse, it is intended to be. Professors on the college campuses hold a position that is generally respected. Academic grousing notwithstanding, faculty occupy a valued place on the college campus. Universities regard them as essential to their mission and treat them accordingly. The professorial status that I took for granted during my long tenure at UAlbany has no place in a college and prison or CIP program. Lip service is often accorded to prison teaching by state institutions, educational as well as carceral, but it has not been my experience that it is valued, except perhaps by those whom it serves. SUNY only recently increased its efforts to fulfill its mandate to serve all populations of New York State. Individual campuses face considerable obstacles, political, social, and certainly economic, to serving incarcerated students. The small number of CIP programs that do exist tend to be the result of a few dedicated individuals. DOCS itself, DOCS is the Department of Corrections and Community Service, has not made the commitment required to make CIP a meaningful alternative to anomie, recidivism, wasted money, and most important, wasted lives. From the perspective of the prison administration, college programs are likely to be seen as an inconvenient, if not dangerous, presence. From the perspective of prison employees, and notably a significant percentage of corrections officers, or COs, faculty are the agents of a system that benefits the undeserving, and worse, that provides without charge to inmates, a term I'll place in quotation marks, to inmates, an education that they themselves are working in jobs they hate to provide for their own children. Given a reception ranging from indifference to passive aggression to outright hostility, the professor in a state prison is invariably made to feel an unwelcome intruder. This behavior is not universal by any means, but far from it is it unusual. Nor, I might add, is it entirely without an unintended and potentially beneficial consequence. The professoriate might, for instance, learn a bit more about how education and elitism have come to be seen as synonymous to many in today's society. Authority. The university system conveys significant authority with the concomitant responsibility to faculty. This power is generally taken for granted. Challenges to it are infrequent. Faculty governance is an integral part of collegiate administration. As a result of institutional history and tradition, this authority needs seldom be overtly invoked. There is none of the "because I said so" that I now associate with COs addressing anyone wearing green. Unfortunately, if entirely understandably, the importance given to education on traditional college campuses simply does not exist in a correctional facility. Whatever professors' authority in classrooms, they possess none of it outside of them. A consequence of this necessary circumstance is that teachers must accommodate policies and practices that go against the grain. For instance, in the facility in which I teach, room length interior windows allow officers to survey the proceedings, which invariably distracts students who have become long accustomed to watching their watchers, or their backs for that matter. Whenever a CO enters the room, which they may do at any time for any reason, sometimes as frivolously as to tell a student to take off a cap or to roll up a pants leg, the professor's authority comes to an end. Classes may be prematurely terminated because a corrections officer wants to get an early start on the rest of his day. And reporting this behavior can be risky. This culture enables the police, as students refer to all corrections officers, to make teachers' lives as well as students rather difficult. Not wishing to jeopardize either my participation in the program or that of the program itself, I have felt that I have little choice but to accept such arbitrary policing. In this regard, I feel that, at least symbolically, I am wearing the same color as my students. Initially, students may view professors as aligned with the authority of the blue-shirted COs. To acknowledge, but also to attenuate this connection, I often joke that I too am a corrections officer of sort, wielding a red pencil rather than a can of pepper spray. In this setting, authority, at least an authority based on respect and trust, can neither be assumed nor imposed. It must be earned. Academic freedom. The traditional campus is a bastion of intellectual freedom. As faculty responsible for course content, requirements, and pedagogy, we have the freedom to teach what we want, how we want. Metaphorically speaking, book bags are not searched for intellectual contraband, at least not, or not yet, in New York State. The CIP campus is highly regulated, and the term censored is not inapposite. Book bags, of course, are searched, and textbooks must be okayed by docs. A semester can easily end before a request for approval of teaching material is acted upon. General inquiries from faculty are likely to be ignored. Library holdings are rigidly controlled. Prisoners found in possession of a book with even a single objective passage, which is arbitrarily determined, are subject to disciplinary action. College textbooks are not infrequently a target of police raids on housing units and are simply thrown away. Students, of course, are accustomed to a culture of suspicion and control, but professors will find themselves challenged in unprecedented and often uncomfortable ways. With that, I'll turn to the other side of the issue, which is the students and the problems that they face entering college, as opposed to the problems that professors face entering prison. First, student safety, and this one is pretty obvious. Students on a college campus occupy relatively safe space. Incidents of harassment, bigotry, or crime are relatively few. The campus boundaries demarcate a zone generally free from most except academic worries. Not that traditional students are free from anxiety. I merely want to emphasize that would be hard for those of us unfamiliar with the prison environment to understand the daily threats that these students face. Those threats come from primarily two internal directions. First, the guards. The tactics of humiliation and the processes of infantilization that are prevalent throughout the facility can regularly be observed in the school building and are not invariably excluded from the classroom itself. In fairness, I should mention that students are also sometimes granted a degree of qualified respect not accorded to the general population, that is, to other inmates. In general, I would say that while physical and emotional violence against prisoners is common, the most insidious form of control is that rules are selectively and arbitrarily enforced, resulting not in an orderly, but an anarchic environment. A technical infraction may be ignored for weeks, only to be harshly invoked on any given day. So-called rules can simply be invented on the spot. As a consequence, students cannot know what to expect or when they might find themselves falling down the rabbit hole or encountering the wandering wickets of a crazy croquet game. The second threat to students is the general population itself. Prisoner-on-prisoner violence is a daily reality, but students are especially liable to harassment. They can be the targets of those in the general population who see participation in college as an implicit criticism or an explicit betrayal. Students are susceptible to bullying or forced favors because it is known that they cannot risk a ticket, that is, a disciplinary action that would result in their removal from the college program. The mere fact of matriculation subjects them to extracurricular stresses having nothing to do either with the challenges that all college students face or with the particular challenges that non-traditional students encounter. Resources. This one too is hardly a surprise. Students in traditional settings have virtually unlimited access to resources inside, but especially outside the classroom. Faculty hold office hours, answer emails, library databases, internet resources, on-campus computing centers, counseling and disability services, student organizations and activities, all support the goal of academic growth. Not to be overlooked are the indirect resources provided by friends and family, and the beneficial effects of ready access to such things as adequate health care or palatable meals. Obviously, few resources are available to CIP students and faculty. No provision is made to meet with faculty outside of class. Internet access is prohibited. While students do have notebook computers, which by the way are also a common casualty of police raids, for use in their housing units, they cannot be taken into the college classrooms. Contact with teacher is simply not allowed. Texts are out of date. Assignments must be handwritten. The only technological improvement that I've witnessed in 7 years, now 8, is that some of the chalkboards have been replaced by dry erase boards, now themselves in pretty sad shape. Simply getting to class. Traditional students can count on a relatively calm university setting, one that runs on a predictable schedule, predictable semester timetable. Classes begin punctually and continue without interruption. Students navigate the challenges of school, work, family, travel with reasonable reliability, and often with a great deal of resourcefulness. Meeting the everyday demands of college life is challenging, but manageable. CIP programs are chaotic. The rigid daily schedule imposed by the prison administration has an ironic pedagogical consequence: frequent disruption of the academic calendar and of individual class sessions. I would generously estimate that the actual number of hours spent in class by students is 3/4 of the number required for an accredited class or degree. A system in which time is typically calculated by the years in a prison sentence pays no attention to the lost hours of instruction in a semester. Hence, here's an example of why so much time is lost. The narrow window for students to have their meals conflicts with the time allowed for classes, so that students very literally have a choice of either eating or coming to class. And as a result of that, of course, classes start late. Students are trying to eat foods that they purchased in the commissary during class, even though food is not technically allowed into the college building. It can lead to a disciplinary ticket if they're caught with it at any point. It is also predictably the case that several students in a good semester will miss chunks of class because they are sent to the box, that is the special housing unit or SHU, because of an alleged disciplinary infraction. The most common reason for tardiness, as well as for the cancellation of classes, is a red dot. Red dot is the term used for any outbreak of violence in the prison that will shut the entire facility down. Cuttings, assaults, fights are daily occurrences. The joke frequently made by people upon learning that I teach in a prison is that I have a captive audience. But that is very far from the case when it comes to classroom attendance. So you might ask, why go there? To address this question, I turn to the Victorian period for a precedent, and this is a mistake that I often make with good-natured groans from my students whenever I refer to ancient literature. Tennyson's version of the Ulysses story may have something to say to us. Odysseus encourages an aging crew, weary in their bones after a decade of struggle to reach their homeland, to set out on a new adventure. And this appeal, I think we can assume, was not met with good-natured groans. So this is what he says to his aging sailors. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will. As Emeriti, we have been in the college classroom for many years, and in retiring have reached, to extend the metaphor, our Ithaca. En route, we have encountered countless issues in the classroom and with students, sometimes with colleagues, almost certainly with administrators, but now we can rest with a sense of satisfaction in jobs well done. For these very reasons, we have a lot to offer. So the short answer is, and contrary to what Gertrude Stein, clearly an anti-Victorian, said of Oakland, California, there is a there there. The problem of the question, why go there, however, is more pointedly, where exactly are we going? To college or to jail? The political theorist Wendy Brown, in a recent New York Times interview, observed that colleges' campuses are, quote, complicated spaces because they aren't just one kind of space. There's the classroom, the dorm, the public space that is the campus. There's what we call clubs, support centers, identity-based or based on social categories or political categories, interests, unquote. Her account suggests a crucial difference between the different theirs of education. I'm not suggesting that the prison campus is an uncomplicated space, far from it, but it is a homogeneous space. It is all prison, all a single panoptical penitentiary. The burden to adapt to this new place, therefore, must fall upon those who accept Odysseus's challenge. Reasons abound for bringing the ivory towers under the surveillance of guard towers. It is a mistake for academics to isolate themselves within the borders of the traditional college campus. Some years back, the English department, after extensive conversations with UAlbany administrators and attorneys, received permission to teach an inside-out class within the prison. The university was willing to foot the bill for students' transportation, as well as provide the textbook for the students who were incarcerated. Ultimately, however, docs thwarted the effort, employing a strategy worthy of Dickens' circumlocution office. Efforts to break out of college and into jail should be increased. Both places stand to benefit. Ultimately, any progress, however slow, will render education less a matter of place than of time, of process, and of bidirectional travel. So I'm going to conclude with 3 Tennysonian rationales for taking this journey. 1, you will find no group of students more motivated, more appreciative, more in need of what education has to offer. Sure, some are there only to get some time off their sentence. Some are there as to counteract the ennui of prison life. Most, however, recognize the opportunity presented to them and are willing to take on the obstacles to it. These students, almost to a person, are demonstrably grateful for teachers' commitment to them. 2, the prison environment is calculated to infantilize, humiliate, dehumanize. College within prison does exactly, compellingly, directly, and immediately the opposite. The empowerment, self-esteem, and autonomy these students experience in intellectual pursuit and development are profound. Most students have never thought of themselves as college material. Some have never thought they would ever succeed at anything in life. It is amazing to observe the truly radical changes that can occur, to witness the incredulity actually succeeding in this foreign world college while living in this familiar world prison, the latter a place that many always expected to visit. It was never a question of if, but only of when. College has the potential to transform prison, the prison that many of the students anticipated, and therefore the life that they expected. The valedictorian of this year's graduating class is currently serving his 4th bid, or his 4th prison sentence. The sentences that he produced for me in English 201 and 204, however, suggest that a 2nd college bid is much more likely than a 5th prison sentence. Finally, you will learn an awful lot, some of it difficult, concerning lives, circumstances, and the systems that shape them. Some of it about the very material that you have taught for your entire career, to say nothing of the place in which you have taught it. Teaching in this place of punitive discipline just might expand the understanding of academic disciplines. It would almost certainly expand your appreciation of their value. This opportunity just might be a way of creating a new sort of space, one where words like sentence and discipline and correction take on new meanings for students and provide new experiences for faculty. In this strange and contradictory space, you may just find yourself fulfilled and renewed in the roles and the goals that brought you into the profession in the first place. So please give some thought to giving this teaching a try. The environment is challenging, but I have no doubt whatsoever that long careers in academia have honed your abilities to improvise and to innovate in face of unexpected and difficult situations. The need is great, but so are the rewards. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know. Thank you so much. I mean, I appreciate your perspective, the challenges, and it's clear to me that it's quite a service that you perform. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone have questions? Yes, sir.
That was outstanding, Randy. Only reminds me of how much we miss you in the English department. My question should be of no surprise to you, and that is, your talk is so important. Have you considered writing it up and maybe submitting it to a publication like the New York Times or the Times Union, and then perhaps expanding on this, because not many academics know about this opportunity?
Yeah, the goal that such the publication was served is a good one. As with so many things involving prison education, there's another side. And I think probably, I'm sorry that the door is open because who knows who might hear this, one becomes paranoid. I have to sign a kind of like a non-disclosure agreement. I will not relate anything that, you'll notice I never mention the facility. I'm hoping that will protect me from any accusation that I have revealed something that comes from anything I observed in the prison itself. So it's a two-sided question or issue.
Well, first, Randy, thanks for, this wonderful reflection. I think we're all pretty well amazed at what you've done. And I think that everybody, as you believe, deserves a second chance. In this situation, not only have you thought about a second chance, but you've taken it a step further and beyond by giving these people a second chance. I mean, this is up to them. And with your great teaching and knowledge, you've given them, the ability to have a second chance. So it's up to them to carry it further. Thank you very much.
I should explain that Robert Allen, who just commented, has experience working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated veterans. So he knows firsthand what it's like.
I knew a little about programs like the programs in prisons, including this unnamed one, many
Thank
years
you.
ago. But I saw them sort of two flavors. There was some where the students had to work all day and then go to school full time at night, and then other ones where their program was education. What is it? Are these full-time students who are busy all day, or?
Well, these students have a great a number of different experiences. So some work all day. There are mandatory programs, drug and alcohol abuse, anger control management, and so on. So there are lots and lots of conflicts that students might face. If you've ever called up the Department of Motor Vehicles with a question, good chances are that you had your question answered or not answered by one of my students. Some students work all day long answering phone calls for DMV. Or about, well, it's the best paid job in the facility, but about 19 cents an hour. The facility does not provide all the necessities of daily living. Prisoners have to buy their own toothpastes, that kind of stuff. And if they don't have an outside source of money, they have to pay for it. But most of the students are part-time. That is, they will take 2 to 3 classes per semester. There's an effort to change that now underway so that they become full-time students. With the resumption of Pell Grants, the imminent resumption of Pell Grants, there are certain requirements that students must fill to qualify for those grants. So often they're full-time, being a full-time student is one of the requirements. And for example, the state program requires students to be full-time students in order to get your Excelsior scholarship.
Is there a screening process for students that allows them into the program? And the other part of that, how much do you know about your students going into it?
Yeah, Hudson Link is the organization that will screen the students. They have to meet requirements of the college that offers the courses. But that's typically only proof of graduation from high school or GED. I know very little about my students, and I make a point of not inquiring about them from either students in the classroom. And if many of them confide in me their experiences, or they write about their experiences. But for example, in the writing workshop, I tell them, don't write about anything you don't want anybody to know about, because we're all going to be talking about your writing. But I'm required to report certain kinds of things to the prison administration. And I tell them exactly what those are, but I also promise them that their writing goes nowhere beyond me. I will not share it voluntarily with anyone. If they give me permission to, then I can.
Randy, that was a brilliant talk, and I've enjoyed hearing about your work over the years. It's such an important public service. The students don't have physical freedom, and many have just never thought they were college material or had intellectual capacity or were worth much.
Exactly.
Can you make any observations about seeing them discover they have intellectual freedom and are growing in capacity, becoming themselves?
Yeah, many are quite vocal about that because it is such a surprise. It's, they're one of the most common things said to me is, this is the first time anybody's treated me like a human being. And that builds upon a interest and a commitment to how did you get interested in this and why is it important to you? And they say, well, it's just so grateful for spending the time here and working with us and paying attention to us. So it usually comes from personal narrative from the students themselves, just saying, this is just amazing. Thank you so much. And it's like this is going to see itself an infantilizing metaphor, but it's like watching kids open something at Christmas. The eyes are big. I think that's poetry. Poetry. They just light up. It's really a delight. So exciting.
I had a question about grading.
Yeah.
Offhand, if that had happened in a university classroom, I would just say that workshop is 20% of your grade, and if you're going to refuse, 20% of it's going to be an F. Now, I guess it's a more general question. Did you flunk those, or did you present it that way to them? And what about retention and grades? I would assume you probably get a lot of. Well, I don't know what your grade distribution is and what philosophy you might adopt for grading in a prison that's different from the philosophy. I grade on a combination of Bell and absolute curve kind of things. But anyway, comment on about grading and passing classes and how that works.
Well, it's really interesting that you would raise that question, because this very morning I was sitting looking at this, making final edits and so on. And I thought about that prologue question. I said, I invited the students who wouldn't work right back into the classroom. And this morning, for the first time, I said, why didn't I just kick them out? Right? You don't want to work here? Out. And I think why I didn't was that it's not that I'll make more exceptions for these students that I would make for my own, but that I have a sense that more is at stake for these guys, and they just don't know it. I mean, one of the things is a lot of these students don't know how to learn. They've not been in a classroom. So I do find myself making accommodations. My grading system is different from the one that you described, especially in a writing workshop. Because if you're grading on a bell curve, you have no motivation to help the guy sitting next to you, right? If he does well, you're going to do worse, or you might. So I explain that situation to them and say, I want everybody to do well, and to do, all teachers do, of course.
Well, we want everybody to be all above average.
Yeah, that's right. Just like Garrison Keillor. But I also continually face the dilemma, and one has to be realistic about it, that these students don't have the academic preparation that our students are involved in. And one's expectation has to I feel, to change again. So I do fight this battle internally as I try and decide on what
Do they get great transcripts?
They do.
And ABC classes.
And students, yes, they do. And they will, the courses, when I began teaching there, courses were offered through Siena. but there was no possibility of getting a degree, and they were just a hodgepodge of courses. As I mentioned, college programs tend to survive on the backs of a few individuals, and I don't think there was much administrative support or college support. That has changed to a certain extent, and the degree is now possible through Columbia Green Community College. So that's why I can mention the graduation. The first graduation was 2019. And I suppose I've never been much in attending U Albany graduations. So this was a graduation which I wouldn't have kept away from, and I never, it was perhaps the happiest day in my teaching career. To see those, there were 13 students. One was a recent transfer in, so we hadn't been my student. The previous 12 had been, sometimes more than they might have liked. But again, to come back to your question, Miriam, they were like kids in a candy store, just such feeling of accomplishment. It was a kind of a transformative day for me.
I'm wondering what you give them to read. What kinds of things are they reading?
Well, it's interesting. One of there's a book closet that's got, towers of well thumbed outdated textbooks. Hudson Lake provides the money for textbooks and tuition. Well, they don't, it's a totally self-funded operation, Hudson Lake. They get no money from anything other than donations. So I'm reluctant to incur any expenses that I can avoid. So I'm using, like Norton Anthology of American Literature from 1980. But Thoreau hasn't changed that much in the last 30 or 40 years, so it's okay. And you have to be really careful about what books you might choose if you wanted to. Any book with sexual content is likely to be prohibited if they know about it.
What about internet based? Can they go home and log on to
Well,
reading essays
until last year, no, there's no internet connection whatsoever.
outside the classroom or home?
None. No one can have internet connection. As you may recall, the Cuomo administration touted the program to provide notebook computers for students, which they did. And there are some classic texts loaded onto those. You could read the Scarlet Letter, for instance, or Moby Dick or something like that. But they can't be used for any other purpose, or you can be used for email. But as you might expect, the email rates are exorbitant. They'll break the bank. It's just like phone use is exorbitantly expensive. You think your phone charger, your data plans are expensive. Try making a phone call out of facilities that will remain unnamed.
So you put some.
No, these are self-contained units.
You can't load them. Chose or.
No. And here's the problem. I don't plan necessarily my entire semester, or if I do plan it, it varies. But I can't, once I put it in the syllabus, I can't change it, not because I would want to change it, but because I can't introduce any materials that are new. Or at least that they don't find out about. There.
So besides English or writing, what other kinds of courses are taught within the college, or what other kinds of degrees are available?
These students get an associate's degree in individual studies, which is basically a gen ed degree. There are specializations at the community college, but they're not available within the prison, partly because of the limitations of that teaching situation. There are no labs. Good luck teaching a biology class or a chemistry class or physics class. You can teach the textbook, but that would be it. So it's a bit of a kind of a hodgepodge, and also recruiting faculty is difficult. And COVID really knocked that for a loop. The prison is a half-hour drive or so from Albany. In the English department, we arranged a writing center, staffed voluntarily by a few faculty and by a lot of graduate students. But transportation, full-time students and full-time teachers taking courses, teaching courses as TAs and lecturers, and writing dissertations. It's hard to get people who have the time to travel, teach. For the volunteers in the English department are unpaid. They're volunteers. Not everybody can do that. So getting teachers who will be able in a position to come down and teach is tough. So the courses this semester are, there's a drawing course, there's a business math course, there are 2 comp classes, 101, 102. I think there's a sociology course, I can't remember which one. So they're tend to be based in the social sciences and humanities. John.
That was my question.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
I was intrigued by your comment about motivation, the differences. Can you elaborate on that? So for example, in terms of nuts and bolts of the classroom, or how the class discussion is different, class dynamics different, the way.
I'm laughing because one of the first, these, not only the academic preparation is missing, but the social experience is missing. Classroom is crazy. I mean, people are, one of the things I find myself saying periodically throughout the semester, which I'll edit for you. All right, no flying F-bombs in the classroom because it's chaos. Oftentimes welcome chaos, but students are, it's hard to get students to respond excitedly about Victorian novels, but for the most part, hard to get them to read them. In this class, the students are, you would think they were having a fight about their favorite football player. No. It's wild. It's great. I really like it. This is part of, they have a lot to give to you. It's not just you're bringing a little package of knowledge to them. They're really sort of opening your eyes, making you a different sort of a teacher. At least me, with the necktie all the time.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation. Since retiring, I am now volunteering at the Center for Law and Justice with
yeah.
Dr. Alice Green.
Yeah, sure.
And so your final under the students 1, 2, 3, we are in the process of hiring a gentleman who went through the Bard Prison Initiative Program. And you remind me that when he starts, we're going to have to make sure we provide safety for him. We'll provide resources. And I don't think we'll have a problem with attendance because this means so much for him. So I want to thank you for reminding me of what we have to provide him in order for him to be a success, because this is his first job.
Right. Many of the people who run the Hudson Link program are formerly incarcerated individuals. And that part of it is great because they've been there, they know what the students are facing. But they don't necessarily have the experience of a college campus. So negotiating things with the campuses is a little more problematic for those students. But the college program also makes everyone's familiar with the recidivism rates for college and non-college students and so on. But the transition is so hard. The obstacles are almost overwhelming. And these are the students who have succeeded and left the facility and are struggling to transition. So those jobs are so important to them. It's great that you can give people who know something about it jobs to help other folks. It's great.
Any other questions?
Ed?
Randy, is there any opportunity for your graduates to continue their studies, like towards a 4-year degree
Yes.
while in prison?
Yes, there are. Hudson Lake has some connections with a few colleges. They're hard to sustain, primarily for economic reasons. But I'll tell you about one of my favorite students who Jane and I were in Lake Placid trying to celebrate Christmas. And I got this text from a phone number I didn't recognize. Well, and I was reluctant to open it, but I said, I'm on vacation, but I'll open it. And it was a picture of the student's transcript, his first semester after leaving facility that won't be named. And it was the best Christmas card I ever got.
Nice.
Last month, I now know his phone number. I got another picture of his new identity card. He just accepted into an MSW program at Hunter College. So there are those stories out there. And this is a guy who, when I started teaching him, had been in jail as long as he had his life before jail. He had spent more time since incarceration than he had lived free. He'd been in jail longer than he had lived out. And now he's getting an MSW. So there are some connections that are possible, but as in response to your question, would say it's so hard to transition and continue. You're not going to get a well-paying job, and you got tuition, fears, and challenges, and place to live. It's really overwhelming, but it can happen.
To what extent is SUNY, the SUNY system supporting this in the campuses, colleges?
It has been woefully inadequate up to this point, but that is beginning to change. I don't know the name of the office, but it's headed by Rachel Sandow, and they're responsible for developing CIP programs in SUNY campuses. And they're doing some really terrific work, but it's an uphill battle. I mean, the colleges have to make a commitment, and it costs a lot. And how do you get your faculty to, leave the ivory tower for a guard tower? It's not so easy. But it's really, really important. If you don't get your faculty engaged, it's hard to recruit faculty, partly because they're all going to become part-time instructors at salaries that are won't pay your gas bill. So it's really tough. But there are a few active programs. There's a few private ones. The BARD program is the most famous, most well-established, most successful. If you saw College Behind Bars, the Lynn Novick documentary about the BARD prison program, it's a terrific documentary, but it also gives you a totally misleading idea of what resources are available to students in prison. BARD has a lot more going for it than SUNY. I mean,
I presume all your students were men.
yes, it's a male facility. Yep.
And are there any opportunities for women?
Yes, Hudson Link has programs in is it Greenhaven? There are several women's facilities that have college programs as well. I don't know how many. There are many, of course, many more male facilities than but there are some, yes. So I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you all for coming. The attraction, right. A reminder that 2 weeks from today, we'll have Frankie Bailey here to discuss her book, When the Red Queen Dies. So if you who've read that over the summer are ready to go, she'll be here with us. Well, thank you all. Thank you. I don't know how you unshare.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Unshare.
Oh,
Neil said I should unshare, but I don't even know how to do it on this.
We have to, try to unshare this now.
Yeah, where,
No, stop share is stop share is up here.
oh,
Okay.
Okay, we're didn't want that. And
My
we can,
only concern today was, since I couldn't always hear the questions, I'm concerned that
yeah,
that's
the
true.
mics
Yeah.
weren't picking it all up.
That's why we probably should use this
Yeah.
for questions.
Might have said it a little too high, but still,
I agree. And during the question and answer, Randy was over here.
yes,